Hey everybody, this is GGB co-host Poppers, and today we're going to be getting into college basketball upset of the day, Friday edition. I'm going to go through this real quick because I got to go to school in a couple of minutes. But Thursday we had 3 big games, so let's go over what happened to them. Okay, so the upset that I picked, TCU to upset Kansas. To be fair, it was the closest game. TCU was leading at halftime, unfortunately wasn't able to pull off the upset, which means Kansas won and rose to number 5 in the Big 12. TCU sits at number 8, thanks to not winning, although even if they had won, nothing would have changed in the Big 12, only with a win, which with Kansas got, and they moved up 1 spot. So in the American, what we expected happened. Houston crushed Tulane, which sent Tulane to last place in the American. The big thing that really happened in the American last night, though, was SMU was able to beat Memphis, having Memphis fall from 2-4 and SMU rising from 4-3, and honestly looking like if there's going to be 2 teams coming out of the American, I find it likely it's going to be Houston and SMU. The big question is what happens if Houston and SMU both don't win the American Championship and there's another team. Will they bring 3 American teams? That's a question to be asked in the future, but not right now quite yet. So, in the West Coast, we had Gonzaga taking on San Diego. Gonzaga won, obviously, but it's something I'm worried about Gonzaga is that the San Diego game was close for like half the game. And really, like, I understand, like, it's nitpicky to say it was close for half a game. That means Gonzaga's not great. But these teams, they're not exactly high caliber. And I'm worried about Gonzaga when they start to play teams that are very high caliber. I understand the Iowa win is huge. But, like, can they beat Baylor at this point? Because, I mean, you can't just let a team... You can let a team like San Diego or Pepperdine or San Francisco stick around for a half. I don't know if you can for Baylor. Baylor has enough talent, and they could beat you if you let them stick around too long. And, like, not just Baylor. Baylor's probably a bad example, because I think Baylor could beat them even if Gonzaga's having an on day, right? But, like, a team like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a little team that I don't think of. Virginia Tech. Let's say you were matched up with Virginia Tech. Can't let Virginia Tech stick around for half, because they're a good basketball team. Virginia Tech could upset you. So, like, there are some things that I'm a little bit worried for this Gonzaga team, but they're nitpicky issues. So, if you did not know, there's 3 ranked teams playing today, 2 games. So, at 5:30, we have number 22 St. Louis, which is sitting at 7-2, traveling to Richmond at 10-4. Now, St. Louis, Dayton, a few days ago, pulled off one of the biggest upsets of the week when they beat St. Louis, and it's honestly looking like St. Louis is not actually, should be a top 25 team. We were assuming it because they did well at a conference, but the fact is, I don't know. I mean, one game can't determine a lot, but, like, Dayton's not great this year. So, honestly, in my opinion, Richmond's probably better than Dayton, which is why it's gonna be interesting. But what happens with a win and loss for each team, right? If St. Louis is to win, right? St. Louis is to win this game. It's a significant rise, right? So they rise from where they are now, which is 13th, right? They can get all the way to 9th, which is pretty impressive. Rise from 13th to 9th in a day with a win. Now, with a loss, Richmond would fall from 4-2 to 4-3, which would put them not in 4th place, which is where they are right now, but they drop to 6th place in the Atlantic 10 behind a team like Dayton and especially UMass, which would suck. I don't want to be behind UMass. UMass is just already just not very good. But this is going to be interesting. I think, but what happens with the Richmond win, you're asking? Okay, with the Richmond win, they pass VCU. For right now, VCU will play again soon. They can get to 5-2 as well, and then they would just pass them because they have a better overall record. So, Richmond would hold on to a 3 spot for a very short amount of time as long as VCU wins their next game. What would happen with a St. Louis loss? Again, they wouldn't move. Falling to 0-2 would be detrimental for their hunt to win this Atlantic 10 and get into the playoffs, right? You can suffer 1 loss. I mean, 1 loss isn't huge. I mean, even the team that's leading the entire division has 1 loss in conference, 6-1 Bonaventure, St. Bonaventure. But 0-2 really hurts to start out a year. Again, 0-2 is not horrible to your case, but then again, you don't rise really quickly with a 1-2 record. You rise 1 spot if you win the next game and you just pass Fordham. So, pretty big game for St. Louis, and it could be a big game for Richmond if they really want to stay in this top of the conference team. So, we also have a pretty big Big Ten game today. We have at 8 o'clock, number 7, Iowa, which is at 12-3, traveling to number 19, Illinois, which is at 10-5, right? Illinois is actually favored by 2 points in this game. It's on FS1. But the fact is, Luka Garza is one of the best team players in the entire NCAA right now. Fantastic basketball player, and a guy I would not want to face in the playoffs, nor literally any time in the season. But let's not count Illinois short as well. They're having a very great year, but Garza is the main point here. Garza leads major conference players in 30-plus point games with 6 and points with 404. So again, this guy's very impressive. So what would happen with a win and a loss for each team? Now, if you're Wisconsin, obviously you're praying to God that Iowa loses this game, because if Iowa loses, you know what happens? You move to the 2 spot in the Big Ten. Especially with a hard Penn State team, an underrated Penn State team coming up on Saturday. Yeah, I'd like to get to number 2. So that when you start, if you lose one of the 2 games against Penn State, which could happen, Penn State's playing at some pretty impeccable basketball right now. You lost to Ohio State. They just played a huge game against Ohio State, very close game. That was with a lot of their players hurt. A lot of them probably will be back against you. So, again, it's going to be interesting. That game's, I think, a must-watch game. It's going to be a huge game this weekend. But it would be huge for Wisconsin if Iowa was to lose. They'd fall to 6-3. And they'd have a 12-4 record, which would still be better than Illinois. But that's the thing. If they fall to 6-3, they don't just fall from 2-3, right? Illinois would have a 7-3 record, which means they would pass them. So then you're at 6-3, and you're right here. You're in 4th place all of a sudden, even though you're Iowa and probably the best team in the conference. So again, at least you have the best player in the conference. I don't know if you're the best overall team. Michigan's pretty great this year. So it's going to be interesting. This one's a huge game as well. What happens if Iowa wins, you're asking? Well, they move to 7-2, and they stay in that spot right behind Michigan, right? And just take some Michigan slip up. Probably not one game, though, because they sit at 8-2. That would be Iowa sitting at 7-2. But again, Michigan's not going to slip up from now on because, they're not playing basketball. So that's a nice way to just stop playing basketball. They should have done that when they're undefeated, because then no one could ever pass them. But Iowa just has to keep winning is the thing if they really want to win this conference. Since Michigan just decided to just stop playing basketball. So what would happen with an Illinois loss? They'd fall to 6-4, right? They would have a 10-6 record in overall. But let's see, you fall behind Ohio State since they won against Penn State 2 days ago. You'd fall below Purdue, so you'd fall from where you are now 4th to 6th, right? So if you're an Ohio State and Purdue fan, you're rooting for Iowa this weekend, right? So you can move up some spots. If you're a Wisconsin fan, you're an Illinois fan this weekend. So it just depends on who your team. Now, if you're a Penn State like me, it doesn't matter for us. Ideally, I'm going to talk about Penn State a little bit more tomorrow, but let's get into it a little bit here. If Penn State is to win tomorrow, they could hop up legitimately 3 spots and get to the 10th spot in a day, which is very impressive, considering how we started the year. And then don't forget, if we do that, we're 1 game behind Indiana and Minnesota, which is huge. Like, the way we started the year, I didn't think we were going to ever get that close, but we could pass teams like Maryland, Northwestern, and Michigan State. I don't think anyone expected us to be ahead of Michigan State this year, so I don't know. I think this is a very exciting opportunity for the Penn State basketball team, especially the way they've been playing. But who does GGB think is going to win this conference? Real quick, who is going to win it? Who is going to get the upset today? The answer? I think it's going to be Richmond. Now, I know Illinois is favored by more points, 2 points in this matchup, right? Richmond's only favored by 1.5. So the real question is, why am I picking Richmond instead of Illinois? And there's one reason, really. It's the fact that I believe in Luka Garza. I believe in Iowa. I think Iowa's a really good basketball team. Now, a lot of people forget Richmond was in the top 25 this year, 2nd week. Now, they were a very good team that year. I mean, that week. And they've dropped off a little bit since, but they're still a very good team. People forget that. Richmond's a team that's kind of slipping under the radar in the Atlantic 10 because we all focus on St. Louis. Weirdly enough, we don't focus on St. Bonaventure. We should start focusing on teams like VCU and Davidson and Dayton, mainly because these are names that we kind of recognize. St. Bonaventure is a team that no one really recognizes too much because they're not normally in the March Madness, but they're doing very well this year as well. But I gotta say, I've loved what Richmond has put to the table this year. St. Louis didn't look good last week. Now, that could be a little bit of rust, but also could be a sign of what's to come. I think Richmond's a better basketball team than St. Louis, which is why they believe they're favored by 1.5 points. Give me Richmond. Everybody is a GGB. Carlos Pepper saying adios amigos and go Spiders.